Hi, and welcome to the IAF Oceania Road to Geelong podcast. I'm Carolyn Smith, and I'm your host. And we are talking to different facilitators as we get closer and closer to the IAF Oceania conference, which will be in Geelong from the 14th to 16th of October. So today on our podcast, I have the privilege of talking to Paul McGregor. Welcome, Paul.
Oh, hello, Carolyn. Thanks for having me. What are you most excited about with the conference?
Oh, just to be inspired and learn about lots of different types of facilitation, and
Yeah,
obviously to hang out with our tribe, which is always lovely because facilitators ask cool questions and they're always
yeah,
interesting and friendly.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're a weird bunch, aren't we? Like emotionally sensitive group of nerds.
Well said, well
Yeah,
said. So, Paul, where are you talking to us from? And tell us about your weird branch of this little nerdy tribe.
yeah. I tipu ake au I raro e te maro o te maunga o Aoraki. I grew up under the mantle of Mount Cook. I kauhoi au I ngā wai o te awa o Waimakariri and swimming in the very chilly waters of the Waimakariri River no Otautahi ahau ina nei ino hoana ahau ki whakatū. So I was born and raised in Christchurch, halfway down the South Island, and we used to come for family holidays up to Kaiteriteri near Nelson. And when I found out that my now wife was raised around there, I sort of was angling for us to move there. So we've been here about a decade in Nelson, and the exact spot that I'm on is an old workers' cottage for the port workers in a place called Mātangiawhio, which was the meeting point between Māori and Pākehā. It was where they traded items back in the day. So that's home for me now. And I love it here because it's you get the best of a city, but also I wander along in the town and there's always someone to say hi to who you know, which I really like. Um,
Fabulous.
yeah, what was the second part of your question?
Yeah, so before we go into the second part, so just if anyone's wondering and you haven't figured it out, Paul is from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and just used a Māori greeting to introduce himself. And you can jump on a map of New Zealand and find all these amazing places he's been talking about, and maybe you'll get to visit them. My second question was about your area of facilitation. So where do you hang out?
Some days I have no idea, Carolyn. And I mean, I've been running my own business as a facilitator for 3 years or so. Before that, I was partner in a consulting firm. And then before that, I was just generally obsessed about facilitation. And the last 3 years have been a real roller coaster of trying to figure out what is my place and my space as a facilitator, a speaker, an author, all that kind of stuff. And I finally feel like I'm coming to an answer, which has been a real mission.
Mm,
And at times it's been heaps of fun trying to figure that out, and other times it's just been really hard. Yeah.
yeah. So, what sort of paths have you been down and what have you discovered so far
Oh,
around
heaps
what
of
you
parts.
love and what
Yeah.
hits a dead end?
Well, one of my strengths, and I think this is true for a lot of facilitators, is I'm quite empathetic and I'm interested in heaps of things. I'm very curious. And so that can be a real strength as a facilitator because it allows us to hold space for things that otherwise might not be able to be possible. But as a business owner, it's been less useful. My approach to running the business has been a little bit, I'll throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So at the start of this year, I sat down with a business mentor and we listed out all of the different bits of work that I've done. And I was kind of feeling embarrassed and ashamed by the list because it was a long list. Like I'd had done lots of different things with lots of different types of clients and lots of different modes of delivery. So some of it was facilitation, strategy facilitation, or process facilitation. Some of it was around better team culture. Some of it was around helping people with a career change. There was all sorts of different things, he looked at it and went, "Oh, that's not a weakness. That's a strength. That's amazing. So many people couldn't do that breadth of stuff," where I'd been kind of beating myself up around it. So, yeah, my experience as a facilitator has been quite broad. I've worked in community engagement where you get thrown in to a gnarly topic where a council or government wants to build trust with the community. I've done business planning and strategy, yeah, team culture, all sorts of things. And I'm
Mm.
finally coming to the point where I'm making some decisions about the work I actually want to do in the future.
Is there a common thread that you see through all the different things?
Um, yeah and no. I mean, I'm interested in whatever the subject is. I like the people, and there's something gnarly going on where people aren't agreeing and they have been circling around a decision for ages. But that's pretty vague. What the no, okay, you're shaking your head, maybe.
Oh, well, I don't know. Helping people solve gnarly problems is a kind of common thread to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is a common thread. It's also in terms of positioning your business is not a great way to position your business. So that's kind of been my journey is forcing myself to try and make some decisions.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just front of mind for this conversation because I feel like I'm finally making some traction and some decisions for the business. And I guess I wanted to share that a little bit on this podcast because I presume that a whole bunch of people listening might be in a similar kind of situation or
Mm.
going through a similar exploration for themselves and their own facilitation practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough thing to be a self-employed facilitator. And yeah, and you've got the journey of learning about your niche and what you want to do and growing your practice. And then
Mm,
on top of that, you've got being a business owner,
yeah.
which is a different set of skills. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting trip.
Yeah. Personally, there's no game I'd rather be playing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it can be challenging at times, and there've been some months where I look at the bank balance and go, what on earth have I been doing?" Um, There's 4 months where I didn't have any revenue back at the start when the government in New Zealand changed, and my market at that time was government service delivery teams, and that work just disappeared overnight. And I
Mm,
went, "Oh my gosh, what the hell am I doing?" Um, and I often say to people that it's just as much personal development as it is professional development as it is business development, and you can't
mm,
avoid one of those three.
yeah. Yeah. And so from that journey, a book has come out.
Yeah, oh my goodness, this feels like really old news to me, but because this book took about 2.5 years to write. I wrote a book one summer on facilitation. I thought, oh, I'll write a book on facilitation for leaders who don't see themselves as facilitators but need to facilitate. And I wrote this book over summer and I kind of didn't look at it for 2 months. And I came back and when I read it, I went, what a load of bollocks. And it was so unoriginal. I thought, what the hell? What have I written? And so I threw that out and then wrote another book, which I've come to learn is actually quite common for people. And so the process of writing that really crummy first draft was useful, even though I threw it all away. So this book is more written, it's kind of a similar market. It's for a mid-career leader who has stepped up from being an expert who knows something and now they're a manager or a leader of people and they're going, uh-oh, how do I manage people and make decisions and deal with conflict? All the stuff that facilitators are really good at.
Hmm.
And trying to say to someone who's new into a leadership role, you don't have to have all the answers. You can just ask better questions and unlock the latent talent, knowledge, wisdom of the people around you.
Mm. Because the title is the question effect. So yeah, what is it about powerful questions that makes them powerful, I guess, about questions that makes them so powerful?
Oh, this. some questions where somebody asks you it and you simply can't answer the question with your current level of thinking.
Mm,
And so you might notice it sometimes on this podcast if you ask a really good question, Carolyn, and someone will go, "Oh, good question." And they scratch their head because the question has just expanded their brain so significantly and invited them to consider something they haven't thought about before. So I just think they're just like wands, they're a magic wand that you can
mm,
wave, but there's a lot of skill and technique to know which question to ask when and how do you ask it and how do you get the conditions right for you to be able to ask a question that challenges somebody else. So I was just really fascinated by that, partly because of the role that mentors and coaches in my life had played in helping me to see problems differently.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And, when we jumped on the call, you asked me what was swimming around in my mind, I think. And I loved that because it just changes the conversation
Yeah.
versus how are you? I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I was thinking the other day about questions because being a facilitator is like being a professional question asker
Yeah.
and thinking about at different times in conflict actually where it's been really, really tense and I've asked a particular question and it's just changed the whole dynamic. So yeah,
Mm.
knowing
What
when
can you
and
think of what
how.
those sorts of questions
Oh
were?
yeah,
Or
yeah. I just was thinking of somebody who was really angry and ranting at me.
yeah.
And I listened and I said to them, for a while, and then I just said, "Would you like me to respond back?" And in a soft voice, and he just
Mm.
stopped and went, "Oh, okay." And I said, "All right, would you like me to talk now?" And he said, "Okay." And it just kind of stopped him in his tracks. And I said, "Here's what I'm hearing from you." And I was able to say, "Is this what the problem is or anything else?" And it just went from very, very angry and confrontational to actually being able to have a conversation. So that was the example I thought of. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Interesting to note so those two questions were both closed questions,
Yeah.
which, which can be really helpful when you're trying to unlock somebody who's got a very closed mind.
Mm.
Like I find I got two kids and they'll come home from school and you go, "How was school today?" Nice, open-ended question, and you know the answer that you get. Good every time. And so I've learned that with the kids, if I go, "Did you play in the playground at lunchtime today?" You actually get this way richer response from them. So even though it was a closed question with them, they'll go, "Yeah, I did. I was playing with blah 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 blah." So I don't know. There's little tricks around questions that kind of surprise me still.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've kindly donated one of your books and also some coaching to the silent auction, which is part of the conference. So, what would you say the book would offer to facilitators?
I'd give if I was facing any kind of transition point in life or any sort of decision where I was stuck, then I think this book will really help facilitators. Uh, or if you're struggling with conflict, I think that would be the second area. I mean, the example you just gave was around how do I respond in conflict, and in the conversations I have with other facilitators, that's the bit that makes them really nervous.
Mm,
um, when jeepers, the energy goes from a 2 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10, sometimes in the space of 5 seconds. And how do we respond to that with curiosity and compassion? Um, that's one of the
yeah.
hardest things, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was thinking when we were talking earlier and saying, like, I could see a common thread around helping people to solve gnarly problems, which is actually quite a thing because some people, like you say, feel very uncomfortable in situations that might be difficult or complex or emotive or where there's conflict, that's
Mm.
to be able to be okay with that and sit with it and be calm with it and figure it out and sometimes be okay, I don't know how to figure this out, let's figure it out together
Yeah.
is actually quite a skill that. And I wonder if as facilitators sometimes we just take for granted what we bring because it just feels very natural.
Oh, 100%. I think facilitators massively undersell the value that we bring in so many ways.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And so also coaching. So coaching's another feather in your cap, I guess, or an offer that you give. Where did that come about for you?
Well, I had a transformative experience where I was coached, and I think that's in a lot of the interviews I hear with facilitators and coaches, it always comes back to we had an experience of amazing facilitation or coaching, and then we just wanted to know how on earth did you do that?
The magic
So
wand, eh?
my first was facilitation. The first time I saw proper facilitation, it just blew my mind. And then later, when I was in my old consulting business, a friend of mine, Tui Williams, was doing a coaching certification, and she rang me up and said, "Hey, I need someone to be a pretend client. Would you be up for it?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Thinking, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing her a favor. Okay, whatever. I don't really need this, but it could be interesting." And little did I know. Um, so yeah, that for me shone a light on a whole lot of stuff I'd been avoiding. It was one of the most powerful processes to go through, and it was deeply uncomfortable,
Mm,
but immensely useful.
mm. And how did that lead you into seeing coaching for others? So kind of making the switch from the person sitting, receiving the questions to the person
Yeah.
asking and helping somebody else. What
Oh, it was
what
a
kind of
couple of
coaching?
years later before that
Mm,
even clicked that it might be something I could potentially do. I was a couple of years, about a year into running my own business before the idea popped up. And it more just came from a client who was struggling with the situation. My first leadership coaching client was someone who I'd been on the board of that organization, and there was a second tier leader who was wanting to eventually step into the chief executive role. And we just had a cup of coffee and thought, oh, I could coach you, maybe. Not quite knowing if I could or how. Um, and then went away and went, oh God, how do I do this? Ooh, quickly research. But I think the foundation of good coaching is curiosity and having an understanding of process. Um, and that's 80% of the value and 80% of the work. And I
mm.
guess when I researched coaching and looked into it, I went, oh, I've actually done a whole lot of prep and training for this in the last 30 years of my life. It just wasn't called a coaching certification. So, okay, actually, maybe I could do some of that.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I sometimes find myself coaching and think, yeah, it's like facilitating for a workshop of one person.
Yeah, yeah. Like easy
Even sometimes the
facilitation,
stickies
really.
come out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So how would you describe your style?
Well, a client described my style as pleasantly provocative
Love it.
because I typically have a smile on my face. We're laughing, but I will challenge you to get under the surface of things that you didn't even know existed.
Mm, mm,
And when I'm facilitating, I love creative experiences more than anything else.
mm,
So when I'm planning, I'm really just thinking, how can I help them to viscerally experience the thing that we're trying to talk about? And I want to do that first so that there's then this everything else flows from that experience where they intimately understand the thing that we're working on because they've just experienced it in that moment in some kind of creative way.
Yeah. So is there when you talk, I love how you describe that visceral experience. So taking people into a different place, using something creative, maybe unexpected. Is there a particular experience that springs to mind when you think where you've seen that work really well?
It probably goes right back to the first experience of really good facilitation. I was working at the Ministry of Justice as a policy advisor 15 years ago or something and not really enjoying my job. I signed up for this leadership development program for people whose work involved young people. It was this 4 day long retreat in Aoraki, north of Wellington, beautiful venue, out in the just off beside the river. And it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. We had about 30 people from around the country, all different backgrounds, ages, experiences, and I was the most privileged person there by a long way. Um, my life has been pretty easy in a lot of ways, really.
Hmm.
Um, and so that experience really expanded my mind around, you know, different experiences that people have in the world. But also, it was really creatively facilitated. So there was a lot of just doing different activities in totally different ways, engaging all of the different senses. So that really stuck with me. I found it really uncomfortable to begin with and quite tiring because it was just so different, especially to the way that we worked in the Ministry of Justice. But it was so viscerally memorable that it still sticks with me now. So, like, that's my reference point. And maybe I've also got some rose tinted glasses on to that experience in the past as well. But I kind of look back at that as the gold standard that I'm trying to emulate in my facilitation.
And is there a moment in your own facilitation where you've sort of thought, yes, this is why I'm doing this?
Oh, I had one recently. I had this terrible experience as a facilitator about 2.5 years ago. It was just after that 4 month period that I mentioned where I had no income. And somebody else approached me to do a bit of work for one of their clients. So it was kind of the work was I was one step removed from the client. I wasn't particularly well paid, and I accepted the work because I needed the money. And it was a team development culture day for a team that hadn't met in a long time, like in a couple of years. And I
Mm.
did some interviews beforehand, and the level of conflict was pretty high. And so I went back to the manager of the team and said, "Yeah, I'm not even sure we should do this workshop. I'm not sure there's enough trust there
Mm.
for it to happen." And the manager basically was just like, "No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Bloody blah is just overblowing it, and yada yada always exaggerates. No, 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 we're good. We're all booked in. We're ready to go." And it went so badly.
Mm.
Um, about halfway through, it blew up. The two people who I'd identified through the interviews had a really toxic relationship, just exploded at each other. And then we spent the rest of that team culture development day with basically two factions. And I was just this
Wow.
go-between between the two factions as they all just tried to recover from this moment of ridiculously intense conflict. And it was honestly, it was one of the worst days of my life. And I came home and I was so demoralized about my business, about my facilitation for quite a long time.
Mm.
And so I didn't do a lot of facilitation for a year. I kind of stepped out of it. I was like, oh man, this isn't for me. Um, I now look back on it with hindsight and go, like, what was I thinking? Trying to do that kind of level of facilitation with that level of conflict. Like I should have trusted my instincts.
Mm,
I've gone back
mm,
to the client and gone, no, 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 no. I should have had a co-facilitator. Lots of should have, should have, should have.
mm,
Um, but it meant that I avoided doing that kind of work for a little while. And actually, one of the things that's been nice about being in the facilitator world is realizing that basically every facilitator worth their salt has had an experience, at least one experience similar to that. They've got their
mm-hmm.
own version of it. I'm guessing
Yeah.
you probably do
Oh
too.
yeah. Yeah, when you're saying that, a couple of times springs to mind and similar to you. Well, one was early in the journey and just so
Mm.
excited and keen to get a client and
Yeah.
alarm bells were ringing constantly, like micromanaged, my advice about the importance of whanaungatanga or building
Mm.
connection at the beginning, because this was a group of managers that are spread around the country, only get
Mm.
together once a year. No,
Mm.
we
Yeah.
don't need to do that. I had like all these topics they wanted me to facilitate, and I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that's a lot of topics to get through. No, we have to get through all of them. Yeah, so many, like they'd set the
Yeah.
agenda and I had to design to 30 minutes for this, 30, even though I could see some things didn't have a logical flow. It was just
Yeah.
horrible. So I
Yeah.
facilitated it like a sergeant major because, we had to get through these
Yeah.
topics.
Yeah.
And then they even right down to making me tell people off for using their cell phones, which quite frankly I couldn't care less. I
Yeah.
never worry about it. I'm like, if it's interesting, people
Yeah.
don't go on their cell phones.
Yeah.
And of course the review was terrible
Yeah.
because you're the person, and I read it and I was like you, Paul. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I should just
Yeah.
resign now. This is horrible. And actually, it was Kerry Price, who you know from the
Mm.
Facilitators
Yeah.
network, and I talked to her, and she was so reassuring. And I learned, and I'm not
Mm.
going to say I didn't get it wrong again because I have,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
I've definitely learned and am learning, trust your gut,
Yeah.
because actually they're usually the ones that want to pay you the less
Yeah.
and they're the hardest, and it is just doesn't go well. And
Yeah.
it's your reputation. So yeah, I
Yeah.
hear you. I
Yeah.
feel your pain.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your reputation and it's your well-being that takes the hit. I don't know about
Yeah,
you. It throws me for quite a while when I have an experience like that because I'm very empathetic. Uh,
yeah.
so yeah, so I'd had that experience, and recently a client approached me where the situation felt quite similar. And and this, of course, is the benefit of having those horrendous experiences. The next time you see that the conditions are kind of similar, you or I find I can then be much more confident in saying, in my experience, blah, 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 blah. And my confidence then shows through in those early discussions that you're having with
Mm,
somebody. And so they're
yeah.
more likely to trust you and listen to you. Um, so, yeah, this recent situation felt very similar and it went completely differently. And I facilitated it in a way where I just came away afterwards and I thought, they don't know the backstory of why I'm so happy with how that went, but I'm just so pleased because we got to the real issues and cleared the muck that was going on in this team and did it in a way that was safe and useful and productive and helpful. Um, so
I
yeah.
love that. It's so good to be able to look back and know that from that experience you've been able to take so much and apply it and see the difference and build your confidence. Yeah,
Mm.
it's wonderful. So what keeps you curious in this work, Paul?
Well, the work I'm mainly doing now, I'm loving. So going back to that, what I talked about at the start of throwing spaghetti at the wall and not quite knowing who I was doing for what, I've recently really narrowed down who I'm working with, what I'm helping them to achieve. And that's given me a lot of purpose and motivation. So I'm mainly just working with membership associations who are a really interesting type of organization because they are all very similar and very different.
Mm.
So, one day I'm chatting with the Civil Construction Association and I'm learning all about the challenges that civil constructors have. And there's a whole lot of civil constructors working in Nelson at the moment. And every time I bike past them, I'm thinking, I know a bit about your world now. So that's fun. And then the next moment, I'm talking with lawyers and then accountants and then uh, plumbers and drain layers. And like, I just get to learn about all these different industries and people, which I love. But for the associations, the issues are quite similar.
Interesting.
They, uh, they want to have more members. They want to deliver more value for the members that they've got. And a lot of what they have made revenue on in the past has become commoditized in the last 2, 3 years, all of a sudden. And so they're looking around and going, oh, shivers, we need to reinvent ourselves.
Mm.
So I'm just loving that work at the moment, helping them to be a bit more ambitious about where they go and then to make some of the changes that they maybe know they need to make, but don't really want to make, but know they should do.
Mm. Mm. Interesting. That sounds really good. Yeah. And it's interesting to hear that even though they're so different from each other, you're finding these common issues. Yeah. And I would say nowadays any organization has to learn to adapt because there's so many changes and pressures and uncertainties.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm.
that's just a walking cliche, that one, really, isn't it? Like
It
we
is a
all kind of
walking
know it,
cliche.
but
Yeah.
doing it can be more challenging.
Yeah. And that's where, facilitation is gold.
Yeah,
Having somebody who has the skills to help you, to kind of help you uncover, to be that, what did you say, that even in your coaching, the friendly challenger, was it?
uh, pleasantly provocative.
Pleasantly provocative. You need that pleasantly provocative person, don't you, to kind of
Yeah,
challenge and ask those questions that people don't want to ask, don't want
yeah,
to answer.
yeah.
Hey, it's been wonderful talking to you, Paul. So, if people want to connect with you, how do they find you?
My website is paulmcgregor.co.nz. I hang out on LinkedIn way more than I should. Either of those.
Great. Well, it's been really interesting talk. And if anyone wants to learn more, just go and check out Paul's website. And also, if you want to have a look at Paul's book, as well as the offer of coaching, you can go on to the silent auction and place some bids. And you can find the auction as well as information about the conference on the 14th to 16th October in Geelong, as well as information about IAF Oceania on the website, which is facilitationinaction.com.au. And thanks for joining us. Look forward to seeing you on future episodes.